What I was trying to kind of convey in this book in terms of like the origins was really trying to talk about that experience that happened here in the city in 2017 when some of these monuments came down. And it was a moment that many of you may have had as well, but I had this incredible sense that, wait a minute, like the world is changing, like at least my world, and like because New Orleans is so representative of so much of this country, I thought that this meant that this was going to be a good thing, that we're going to push this country forward. And then in the process of doing that, I take you around the world where I'm in these museums, I'm in public spaces in Paris and Venice, all throughout the South in Richmond, South Dakota, where I'm really trying to engage with this moment, to really kind of look at what do these monuments mean? What do these sculptures mean? What do these paintings mean for us now, and what could they mean for us in the future? I think to be Black in this time is to experience this cognitive dissonance all the time. I think a big part of this book is really trying to ask, or to encourage you to ask yourself, what was before where you are? I think the biggest thing about education is really giving people the tools and to walk away, right? To step aside. That is never about me. We're doing this together. It's really, I'm trying to help you find yourself. Like, come have a seat, come have a seat, come have a seat. You can sit wherever you like. There's open seats, there's seats over there. You can sit there. There's your family over here too. All right, front row. All right, guys. I'm a junior because of this man is a senior. I will say before we start, can I say one more thing?
Absolutely, please.
Yesterday was January 6th. It happened to be my father's birthday. I would love for y'all to wish him happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
So let's do it.
Once again, thank you all for coming. So my name is DJ Johnson. I am the owner of Baldwin Co. I am sitting in for B. Mike. So I'm sorry if you all came here expecting to see Brandon B. Mike Odoms. He is unfortunately fell under the weather and unable to make it today. So I'm sitting in for the amazing B. Mike. So thank you all for being here. Wanted to just give one more round of applause for Irvin. Thank you. This is his pub day for this amazing book.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I'll take a few minutes. I know you all are familiar with Irvin, but I'll take a few minutes just to quickly read his bio. So I'm sorry, excuse me for a quick read, but I just think it's important to highlight some of his major accomplishments. Of course, New Orleans born, Brooklyn-based writer now. His writing has been featured in The Atlantic and Ebony, and many other places. He has an MFA from the New School, and an MA from Morgan State University, and a BA from Morehouse College. He's received fellowships and awards from the Voices of Our National Arts Foundation, the Research Foundation of CUNY, the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, the American Council of Learned Societies, and the Mellon Foundation, and has been blurbed by some of the best authors and some of my favorite authors in the world for this book. So congratulations to you, man. Thank you for coming to Baldwin Company on Pub Day. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you at Baldwin Company.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Truly, truly.
So I'll just dive right into it. I always like to ask questions about the title, because I think the title it sets that tone in terms of what the viewer, what the reader, what is going to make that first impression. They always say, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So this is your first impression. One, I love the cover. If you can kind of walk me through the cover detail, the title, In Open Contempt, Confronting White Supremacy in Art and Public Spaces, and what were some of the origins around the idea of writing this book?
Great question. So, all right, we'll go to the title, we'll go to the cover, and we'll talk about some origins. So the cover, I'll start there, was a day that was really incredible when this artist said yes. So this is Titus Kaphar, and he's an incredible artist. This painting itself has resold for like 7-8 figures. So this is like a huge, really, really important artist. And the reason why I wanted this one is because the actual setting of this painting is Monticello, right? So that's Thomas Jefferson's plantation home, right? And so the actual figure is anonymous person, but the actual figure itself comes from a Thomas Jefferson portrait. So this is technically Thomas Jefferson, but someone else in its place. And this someone else, Titus Kaphar imagined, was the people that he enslaved. And so that's why his face is, I guess, anonymous. If you see it in person, it's really beautiful in terms of like it's black tar and it's grooved. And each one of the people that he enslaved is represented in this painting. And Titus Kaphar called it a visual reparation. And so he said he wanted to create this image of a person that was enslaved by Thomas Jefferson with all the wealth that Jefferson had that they didn't have. And so that's why you can see that he's dressed regally, incredible attire, and he looks like a man of his time, a wealthy man, but clearly we know that he wasn't. And so the title of this painting is called Page 4 of Thomas Jefferson's Farm Book. And that's where he listed all the people he enslaved. And Thomas Jefferson, if you didn't know, actually enslaved the most, he's the president who enslaved the most humans of all, of them all. So he was really superb in that regard. So anyway, so that was the idea of the painting, but the title comes from an experience that I had in Paris. So I was in Paris with my wife, and she wasn't my wife then. We were madly in love. We still kind of are. Mostly, most days, we're madly in love. But we were in the throes of like falling in love, and it was a beautiful morning. We were really excited, and we were walking to the Louvre, and she goes in this pharmacy to get some allergy meds. And I step outside and I'm really trying to take in Paris. I'm really trying to enjoy it. I'm really excited. And I look across the street from me and I see this painting, this relief on the side of a residential building that is clearly an advertisement for slavery. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, am I tripping? Like, am I seeing this? And that was the moment where my whole day was just kind of ruined. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, how am I here in this moment in love, really excited to go to this incredible museum of wonderful art, but I'm seeing this enslaved man serve this white slave owner in an image that seems to have been here for decades, maybe even a century. And I'm thinking, like, how long has this been here? Like, why is this still up? And so it made me think about all of these moments, these surreal moments that I've read and that I've experienced. And the title comes from a moment where Frederick Douglass had a similar experience. And this moment for him was when he realized that he was enslaved. So if you know the story of Frederick Douglass or a little bit of Frederick Douglass's life, he actually was fortunate enough as a young boy to be taught how to read. He actually lived a really cush life as a really young boy. But then when his master died, that's when things changed. After his master died, they had to sell all of his property. And that's when Frederick Douglass learned that he was enslaved. And when they took him to the auction block, he was like, wait a minute, like I'm about to be reduced and held in open contempt, like all of these animals and all of these people here. And so I took the title from that experience that Frederick Douglass had when he first realized that, wait a minute, like I am enslaved, right? And so, I took all of those pieces together, and what I was trying to kind of convey in this book in terms of like the origins was really trying to talk about that experience that happened here in the city in 2017 when some of these monuments came down, right? And it was a moment that many of you may have had as well, but I had this incredible sense that, wait a minute, like the world is changing, like at least my world. And like, because New Orleans is so representative of so much of this country, I thought that this meant that this was going to be a good thing, that we're going to push this country forward. And obviously we are where we are in terms of our political kind of system. But so that was some of the origins in terms of like the painting and the title. But I came home in 2017 and I looked at these monuments that were taken down, and then I walked the city to see the ones that are still up. And then in the process of doing that, I take you around the world where I'm in these museums, I'm in public spaces in Paris and Venice, all throughout the South and Richmond, South Dakota, where I'm really trying to engage with this moment to really kind of look at what do these monuments mean? What do these sculptures mean? What do these paintings mean for us now? And what could they mean for us in the future?
Was it a level of cognitive dissonance when you're in Paris and you saw the open contentment versus you're here, you're born in New Orleans, you walk around, you see this level of open contentment every single day.
Every day.
But it doesn't elicit the same emotion. But yet you go to Paris and you see the same level of open contentment, and now your entire day. So is that a level of cognitive dissonance, or because you just didn't expect them to display the same level of white supremacy that has become so prominent and prevalent in everyday society in America?
I think that's it. That's exactly what it is. I think to be Black in this time is to experience this cognitive dissonance all the time, right? Like white supremacy sneaks up on you, right? Sometimes you could be like, oh, I'm having a good day. I'm not thinking about this. And then you drive past Beauregard, or you drive down Jeff Davis, which is no longer Jeff Davis, right? And you're like, oh, wait a minute. Or you make a left on Robert E. Lee to go to UNO. You're like, wait a minute. Why am I making a left on Robert E. Lee? And so you're thinking about all these things, and you can easily forget about it. And there's a part that I'm going to actually read from in the book today that I've learned about my father's family and the street that we grew up on. The street is called Andrew Street. And Manuel Andrew was the slave owner who thwarted the largest slave rebellion in U.S. history, and happened here on River Road on the German coast. And tomorrow will mark 214 years of that rebellion, January 8th, right? And so as I was doing this research, I went to the Whitney Plantation. I learned about this guy, Manuel Andrew, and I'm like, wait a minute. Andrew, who is this guy? Like, wait a minute, I know Andrew. And then I started doing the research, and I was like, wait a minute. We grew up on the street. Our lives are always kind of shaped by this white supremacy. Like, why does it have to be this way? Like, at what moment are we going to experience some sort of truer freedom? Right. I'm fortunate enough to have been born in the 80s and to have not experienced segregation, but my ancestors have. And like, I still carry that with me as they carry it. And, we've only been 60 years removed from that. So you got 60 years compared to 400, like how much longer do we have to kind of wait to get some truer freedom?
Love for you to read that excerpt.
All right, so I'm going to read from chapter 2, actually. It's called 1811 Street. So this is where I reimagined the name of the street. So 1811 is the year in which this rebellion happened. So I'm going to read from the end of that chapter, and just a couple pages.
If y'all won't follow along like church, to let you know the page.
I'm saying, like, make sure you got your scripture, right? Make sure I got my page. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm on page 43 for those who want to follow along. I just realized I don't have my glasses. Sorry. Okay. my jacket. Gotcha. I was like, why are the words so blurry? Oh. I just started wearing glasses this past year, so it's just kind of a new thing for me. I didn't grow up wearing glasses. I'm so sorry, guys. Thank you for indulging me. I literally just started wearing them this year, so. But they're useful. I'm like, oh wow, I can see better. This is it's a cool invention. All right, page 43 after the break. So let me wipe them off. That's another thing I need to learn to keep them clean. I'm still learning. I'm still learning. There we go. Page 43. All right, here we go. Street names in New Orleans were officially labeled in 1721 and were confined to the French Quarter. Each honored the royal court, their families, and their baptismal names. As the city expanded, wealthy slave owners established faubourgs around the quarter, what we will call suburbs today, and they chose to name them as they saw fit. When the Americans came, so did the street names in their honor. This was also the case during the period of Spanish control. The names have undergone periods of sweeping change beginning in 1852 through 1924, when the city council established uniformity and got rid of duplications, fragmented stretches, and unseemly appellations by integrating the faubourgs into the grid we know today. Since then, they have been altered periodically at the behest of the city's leadership. The change of Jeff Davis, one of the city's longest and most recognizable streets, came as the first of many with the establishment of the City Council Street Renaming Commission, which was formed weeks after the murder of George Floyd in May 2020, and was tasked with, quote, renaming certain streets, parks, and public places in New Orleans that honor white supremacists. Change was long overdue, but likely wouldn't have occurred without Floyd's murder. The catalyst for change often stir when a Black man, woman, or child is killed. And we keep asking ourselves, must this always be the case? How many must be killed before we remove all evidence of terror from the public eye? The commission's goals were to provide, quote, a list of streets, parks, and places that should be renamed, accompanied by a detailed explanation, a proposed list of replacement names for each recommended street, park, or place, accompanied by a detailed explanation, and a process to facilitate both educating residents and receiving public feedback on the proposed changes. With the support of historians, experts, academics, students, the New Orleans Public Library, and suggestions from the public, the commission compiled a 172-page document that is nothing short of amazing. The website articulates the success of the commission succinctly. Quote, while other U.S. cities have made similar efforts to re-examine historical symbols that have come under new scrutiny in the wake of the police brutality and racial protests, the recommendations outlined in this report represent the most comprehensive set of changes proposed by any other municipality in the country at this time. What's most impressive is the interactive map that allows you to toggle over the streets under reconsideration and learn about the namesakes of the figures who should take their place. Each name and proposed replacement offering an incredible lesson on the city's history. To date, however, only a handful of changes have been made. The chief of staff for a council member told me about the constraints facing the newly elected commission. Assuming a seat on the city council is like drinking from a fire hose, he said. There are so many needs to address. That is, until another Black person is publicly killed, I wanted to say. Who will die next? Who else will be sacrificed before all symbols of white supremacy vanish before our eyes? This, more than potholes and power lines, seems to be the pressing issue of our time. Racism versus infrastructure has always been a rigged comparison because racism has always influenced the decisions made about infrastructure. Although there isn't evidence to corroborate their claims, locals believe Betsy didn't inundate the city because officials decided to direct the flow of water to one community, the community that sits along the Industrial Canal, the Lower Ninth Ward. Sacrificing the Blacks to save the wealth of the plantation homes uptown was an easy choice. Even when we achieved the freedom to own our homes, we were still subject to the whims of white supremacy and how it manipulates geography to its benefit. Worse than redlining, which designated where we could live and devalued our homes, we believed the architects and engineers of hatred in New Orleans wanted to see us drown. There isn't evidence to disprove these claims either. Explain the changes made without the commission's approval, I pressed the staffer further. How were some street names so odious that they were changed without debate? This was progress, he insisted, and he referred me to the proposed name changes that would appear before the council. But when I scrolled the names in question, I didn't see a proposal for the street that mattered to me most. Clearly, people care. And when I say people, I include those who used to live there. The school that sat on Andrea a few blocks from our house, where my family studied, had its name changed to Martin Luther King Jr. in a show of progress. This change seems understandable in a historically Black neighborhood, except its residents, both past and present, protested. King was an incredible icon, undoubtedly our most visible, honored on the National Mall for good reason. But they wanted it changed back to what it used to be, to honor Alfred E. Lawless, a Black educator who advocated for the rights of Black students in the early 20th century. He was also the founder of Beecham Memorial United Church of Christ, the church I attended every Sunday of my youth. Because Lawless was the only Black high school in the Lower Ninth Ward, its alumni constitute a vast network of Black professionals throughout the city who joined efforts to successfully change it back. The reports that detail their arguments illustrate an incredible sense of pride for the Lower Ninth and their school, a pride that still drips from their tongues. It seems that the names do matter. they always will. Thank you, guys. So,
love that. As a kid from the lower Ninth Ward, for those who may not be familiar with Hurricane Betsy and the redlining, the accusations of them blowing up the levees and the flooding, can you walk people through that? Talk about that history.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously I wasn't alive then, but my family has told me about these stories multiple times, right? My father, sitting here, often tells me that was the most scared he's ever been, the day that Betsy hit, right? But when I hear the stories of my ancestors telling me how they felt and how their house was destroyed and how they had to rebuild it, like there's so much pain and history and trauma, but so much love as well, and like rebuilding, right? But because of that community, right? Because that community was in a way segregated off, in a way in an area that probably they should have never built homes, right? But because we lived there, because we had so much history there, it meant so much. And I think it's an incredible thing to kind of know that Betsy happened, and then in 2005 Katrina happened, and then this community kind of changed for forever, really. And interestingly enough, in a group chat with my family, there's new development. So our house on Andrew, the land was flattened. The house was gone. The house was bulldozed. And early in the chapter, I talk about my aunt who was there, who witnessed it being demolished and what that felt like. I asked her what that felt like to see your childhood home just kind of be bulldozed. But now, progress, I don't know if you call it progress, we're talking about what's happening with the land now. And now there's someone's building a house there. And it's like, wow, okay, like, does that mean that our memories are gone? Or does that mean that, and, I think that, my father's shaking his head. He's like, no, I mean, I think there's so many arguments, right, for it. Like, that was the past, but what is now? And I think a big part of this book is really trying to ask, or to encourage you to ask yourself, what was before where you are? Who was before where you are? And not just people, but what about other organisms, right? Other life forms, right? And what does that mean? How are we honoring this public space? How are we preserving it? How are we making it better? How are we improving it? How are we destroying it? Right. And so I think the book is really trying to grappling with all of those ideas. Like, what are we putting around our squares? Why are we naming these schools these names? Why are we naming these streets these names? Like, who has control over that? And the answer is us. Like, we have control over our subconscious, right? All of the things that we see every day, we can change those.
We talk about progress. You talk about progress in the excerpt you read. You just talked about progress in terms of the street names, progressing as a society, progressing as a community. When you think about the changing of names on streets, changing of names on school buildings, but the concrete, systematic education, healthcare, impoverishment, housing, those depravities, they still exist. Yeah. So can you identify, like, is that real progress because a street name has been changed? And if it is, let me know. Or is it superficial? Like, how do you identify that? Is it real progress? Is it concrete progress when we get a street name change? However, you name a street Martin Luther King, but still it includes some of the highest crime rate, some of the lowest incomes, and some of the worst environmental conditions in the city. So is it progress? Is it superficial? Like, just kind of like unpack that for me.
I think it's yes, and it's both. It's yes and no. Because I think, like, some things are superficial, right? Some things are just we're changing them because there's something that happened in the zeitgeist or in the cultural moment that we need to kind of make a difference. For example, the Commanders, right? The Washington Commanders were no longer, a team that was, disrespecting natives, but has something really changed about the NFL structure? Does Colin Kaepernick have a job? No, right? And so we have to ask ourselves, like, what really is changed? But I would argue that, yes, these are just the beginning steps. And so let me give you an example. My son is 5 years old, and he's really into geography and presidents and civic structures and holidays, right? And so he's really excited about MLK coming up, right? But last year, because I think schools should do this, he really got into Juneteenth. Right. And so what are we going to tell our kids what Juneteenth is? Right. It is a federal holiday now. Right. And so now we need to have this conversation about, well, what happened before and how can we change it? And I had a really challenging, conflicted conversation or a moment on Juneteenth. I was on the beach with my kids. Everyone was off. Everyone had the day off, but I'm in New York and I'm on the beach and everyone is just having a great time. And like, no one seems to kind of really be acknowledging what this really means. And so it's up to us to figure out, well, like, how do we push this forward? Like, so it's up to us. Yes, we changed the school names, but now we got to go a step further. And I think those initial steps matter, right? It matters that we don't have a street called Jeff Davis anymore, right? I think that matters. And we shouldn't be honoring Confederates because my son is going to ask me who that guy is. And what am I going to tell him? Right? I'm going to tell him that we are still stuck in the past. We're still stuck in a place that is inequitable. And we are. And we have to kind of keep pushing forward. And so I think to really answer the question, like, nothing is going to change white supremacy alone. One thing. A bunch of things have to do this, right? This has to be a multi-pronged approach to address white supremacy because it is everywhere. Right, the criminal justice system, the healthcare system, the housing system, all of these systems need to be attacked from every angle. And one of which is our subconscious mind, because I think street names, monuments, they attack our subconscious. And the subconscious is often the most dangerous because the trauma emerges when you least expect it. And I wind up in Paris and I, almost in tears because I just can't believe that I've traveled this far to still feel less than.
We see monuments, and you talked about monuments and what they symbolize. And you talked about Mitch Landrieu taking down the monuments in 2017. Of course, you're approaching individuals who are protesting the removal of the monuments and what that experience was like for you and how heart-wrenching it was of an experience in the book. And with that being said, New Orleans, number 2 in the country for most Confederate monuments, only behind Richmond, Virginia. And we talk about the symbolism behind that. And James Baldwin has a wonderful quote and says that art is here to serve a purpose of showing us mirrors and windows within ourselves. What does the Confederate monuments removal of that, what does that say about where we are as New Orleans today? Does it have beyond a symbolic progress or meaning for where we are today that we finally took that step to removing those monuments?
I would like to think so. And look, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm a son of New Orleans, but I can't speak for the people who live here because I don't live here anymore. And so I recognize that, hey, look, and that's also like a conflict for me too. It's just like, whoa, I don't live here anymore. Sometimes I want to live here. I don't come here as much anymore because my parents were displaced after Katrina. So my relationship with my own city has changed because of some other disaster. But I would like to think so. I would like to think that those things coming down allow for other people to come here and feel welcomed, right? I would like to think that those things coming down allow spaces like this to exist, right? I would like to think that when we are consciously as a city really trying to grapple with our past, that it will become a more welcoming city, like that we would have less division, But look, I'm not going to kind of sugarcoat that there's still tons of inequities. I think the biggest thing, and I end the book with these ideas, is that the wealth gap is still there, right? Taking down a monument is not going to fix the wealth gap until we take down this monument and then take that next step. And the conversation is like, oh, we took this down because we oppress you, and now we actually owe you something that we never paid you back. It still baffles me. Like, I still have this surreal moment. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, this country was built on free labor by people who still live here, that people who can trace that their ancestors work here for free. So why haven't we been compensated when we can send billions of dollars to fund genocide and other wars that don't have anything to do with us when we created this country? Like, I still don't get that. And I'm still going to, for the rest of my days, have that conversation, keep asking that question. So tell me again when you're going to like repay us or repair this. Like, tell me again when that's happening. And so I think that's what this book is about, is just like the steps. These are steps to get to that next conversation, right? Juneteenth is cool, but we still have Columbus Day. And it's like, okay, well, let's, like MLK is cool, but we're still honoring Thomas Jefferson, right? And Richmond Richmond, I would argue, is like New Orleans and has taken a huge leap to take down a lot of its Confederate monuments. And I go to Richmond in the book and I walk these streets and I have this similar experience. It's like, wow, this was the seat of the Confederacy. This was the capital of the Confederacy, Richmond, Virginia. And so you go there and you see that these things have been taken down, and you see, I think there is real progress. I think people start to feel change.
What is that next step? We talk about it. You highlight it in the book, but what is that next conversation? Where would you like to see that conversation go? Like, if individuals, they read your book, they say, okay, I've become aware of how these symbolic gestures could lead to real progress, but I need to know, what is that next step?
To be honest with you, I think the next step is the people in power have to decide that they're willing to let some of it go. Right. And I think that we have to keep pushing the people in power to be like, hey, maybe it is time, right? The global majority actually deserves what is owed to them. Like, you are actually not the majority anymore, right? Like things are starting to shift. And look, I don't know how many generations it's going to take, but I only have one life and I really want to live the best life I can while I have it. And so I would like to be as free as possible.
How do you get powerful people to succeed power?
I mean, I don't know. I don't. It's like you got to shoot them. I don't know. I don't know. I don't advocate violence. I don't want to say that. I'm not an advocate of violence. I'm being facetious here. But look, I think you got to continue to work it at every angle. You got to be diplomatic. You got to meet people where they are. You got to kind of continue to show. I think one of the biggest things that bothers me about where we are is the movement of banning books and banning education and really trying to avoid what is and what was. And so I think education is always going to allow people to arrive at their own answers. And I think there's a lot of well-meaning people in power who are unaware how white supremacy is also injuring them. Because white supremacy is not just about white people. I think that's the thing that they think like, oh, it's Ku Klux, the KKK doesn't exist anymore. No, white supremacy is about systems. It's about systems that create environments where a Black woman is more likely to die in childbirth than any other person. It's like, why is that the case, right? White supremacy is that Black people are find themselves in jail more than any other people. We don't commit more crimes. No, we're just more criminalized, right? And so I think those are the systems. It's not about white people. It's about the systems that have been created to keep us oppressed.
I love what you say in terms of how do you gain that power. You went to education. And one of my favorite people in the history is Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela says that the most powerful weapon in the world to change the world is education. It's not a gun. It's not a bomb. It's not a knife. It's education. You're an educator.
Yeah.
Right now. You're doing amazing things right now in the field of education. You talked about the book bans. You talked about educating individuals in terms of self-identity, self-reflection, making them aware of the hidden racism. Talk a little bit more about the things you're doing in education, your students, that experience, about how that's being reflected and what you hope to gain from that.
Yeah, really good question. I think the biggest thing about education is really giving people the tools and to walk away, right? To step aside, right? I think that one of the biggest lessons I've learned as an educator that is never about me. We're doing this together. It's really, I'm trying to help you find yourself, right? And I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to give you the directions. I'm going to give you the books. I'm going to give you the paths, the things that you can kind of study and learn from, but it's about you, right? Education is really about self-awareness, self-actualization. Like, I can't do it for you. You have to kind of want to change. And so I think it's just about my approach. And I think this book really is about trying to educate us all, like really trying to have our perspective changes. People asking like, what's the message that you want people to take from this book? I want you to leave this book changed, meaning that your eyes will always be open, when they were potentially closed. Like it may be hard for you to walk past a statue again. It might be hard for you to walk past and not consider a street sign or a school name, right? Or question why a book is banned. Like, what is really actually at stake here? Or what is this holiday about? Like, I want you to really question the systems around you. And I think that's what it is. I ask questions and I try to help you find your own answers. I think that's what a good educator does.
John Henry Clark says that powerful people cannot afford to educate the people they oppress, because once you educate them, they will no longer ask for power, they will take power. With so much opposition, not just the book bans, but the curriculum changes in the schools of removing Black history, rewriting Black history, rewriting the entire just fabric of how historical events have played out in society, equipping them with the tools, the self-actualization, saying, okay, I'm giving you this hammer. I've taught you how to use it, but you learn how to cultivate the strength of that on your own. Should we be doing, as Black educators, should we be doing more rather than just saying, I'm gonna give you the tools and let you operate on your own? Should we be doing more in guiding them on how to break down these oppressive systems?
I would say yes and no again. I think sometimes the idea, the quest for more, this lack of satisfaction or being satisfied or being sated is also a symptom of white supremacy, right? Is this idea of overworking, feeling like you always have to overachieve. But I'm really encouraged, like even in Florida is one of the worst places educationally right now in terms of like what they're banning. But in Florida, I've seen some really awesome things where Black educators are getting with Black students and they're having Black history schools on Saturday. And I think that's what it is. We have to kind of go back to those spaces. I went to UNO 2 years here before I transferred to Morehouse. And I have an experience in the book where I'm at UNO that I'm reading this book called Jane Eyre. It's a classic book. People were forced to read it in high schools. And I talk about this experience of having an awakening of sorts, and reading this book and realizing, okay, this is not for me. It also has some racist ideas. Then I go to Morehouse and I have this incredible experience. Like, oh, wait a minute. Like, not that there utopias ever exist or perfect places, but that was close, And I think these, HBCUs, these Black spaces, when I went there, I realized, took a step back. I was like, wait a minute. Like most of my family went to HBCUs. Like I grew up in a Black city. Like I was taught by Black people. Like there's so much significance in being taught by your own. And it's hard to kind of quantify the benefits of that. And I went to Morgan State, another HBCU, and I had that similar experience. It's just like, wait a minute. Like I would not be the person I am today if I didn't go to Morehouse. 100%. I would probably be working a job stuck in like some rat race of white supremacy, maybe even, living in New Orleans and thinking I'm happy, but somehow probably, depressed and not really realizing that I haven't achieved what I should have. That makes sense.
Yes, we're coming up on time, so I want to leave some time for questions and answers. So please, is there anyone in the audience that has a question they would like to ask Irvin?
Don't be shy.
Please don't be shy.
I'd like to continue with education as an educator myself all my life in New York City, public schools there. A big concern was Martin Luther King Day and June 19th, that we were out on those days and not in school having education. A lot of the Black principals I had, teachers, were kind of upset about that because we shouldn't be out having fun and getting drunk. We should be in school learning who these people are.
Yeah.
As an educator, if you're talking about education in the future, certainly I think losing that Anglo-Saxon history in the schools and having the students learn more. The book banning in Florida keeps me away from Florida. Texas had different books. I'm not crazy about their school system either. That there has to be, I think, a large evolution where maybe you go back to a segregation because some of the best schools that the South had was after the Civil War,
Yeah.
when it was only black schools,
Yeah.
and white women came down and they had a solid education, and they
Yeah.
were probably the most educated blacks at that point.
I think
And they then went through Reconstruction and became senators and governors and mayors, and all of that started to really blossom until it stopped, and it blew up. But that need for education is crucial. Having seen it in New York, having taught in private schools in New England, and then in public schools in New York, seeing the hunger of the students in New York City. I was the only white person in those classes.
Yeah.
The hunger they had and the desire they had was very reassuring. Unfortunately, the garbage we had to feed them wasn't good enough.
So, I mean, if I could piece a question out of there, what do we do? How do we move forward? I would argue, I have this experience, this experiential experience all the time. If I'm in a room and it's mostly black professionals, it's crazy, but like 70, 80% of those people there went to black schools. And it was just like, oh, you went to Xavier, you went to Dillard, you went to FAM, you went to Howard. These are professional people. We learn that we can teach ourselves really well. And there's a lack of trauma there. And look, I truly believe in self-segregated places. Like, you can decide to do that. I'm not saying they're better or worse. I think they were better for me. But yes, I think we still need to kind of push that. But look, I believe in self-segregated spaces for all people. I think, like, in Korea, there's wonderful examples. I mean, like, there's so many places, native schools, Jewish schools.
Charter schools in New York seem to be that way as well.
Yeah, I think it's different. Like, culturally, when you can teach your own, there's certain language that we don't always have to translate or that you miss. I think, when you are trying to operate within different cultures that are not your own. That's just my argument as a person who's gone to majority white schools and going to black schools. I just felt something that's hard to quantify, in black spaces.
Just one bit of clarification. A lot of the schools, black schools back in those days, there were black teachers. Those were black women. There were not necessarily white northern women coming down to educate blacks, but that was black women in the black schools educating blacks to be the excellent students, where we went to the Morehouse and the Fisk. So just clarification.
Thank you for touching on it.
Sorry.
Hey, it's just good to see you here. I know Irvin from New York, although I'm also from New Orleans, so it's kind of wild to be like, you back home. One of the questions I have is sort of like tying in so many pieces of what you talked about tonight, as well as the future. We got AI, we got ChatGPT coming up. You're talking about education. Even though you didn't say it, there's an aspect of like, how are you as a artist, as a writer, as an educator modeling, and how are you hoping that the future of young black writers is showing up, particularly with this new sort of AI sort of segment coming in? Like, where do you see this going? How are you helping modeling, or where are you hoping that others are helping in modeling that way?
Look, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I'm not optimistic. I think AI is a beast. Like, teaching freshman English and having students turn in these immaculate papers. I'm like, I've been doing this for a long time, and like in the past 2 years, there's no grammatical errors anymore. Like before, like I would have to teach you what like a comma splice was or this or that. It's like, okay, that's what education is about. But now it's just like, how is all of this perfect? And so it's really disheartening. It really is, because I think we're losing a sense of humanity, because really the only thing that separates us from other animals, right, in terms of our species, is our brains, right? The size of our brains. And because our brains are such the size, if we continue to build them and grow them, then we can create these incredible structures that we do. We can have satellites that orbit the planet. We can do all incredible things. We can figure out the genome, right? We can do a lot of things as humans if we continue to keep pushing that thing that separates us from other animals. But if we don't, then we become more savage, right? We rely on, more base things, food, shelter, violence, right? We return to that. So look, I hate to be pessimistic, but I just being in the middle of it, like, I don't know how we get out of it or move away from it. AI, I think, is incredible utility. I think there's some good uses for it for sure. I think we could probably use it to solve cancer, right? To solve some really incredible things. But I think in terms of engaging with text, engaging with world, engaging with creativity, even now it's like painting, the whole idea of art is changing, where people are like, all right, I'm like an AI artist, or like, how is that like an original product now if I had a computer create this masterpiece? And so like the whole, what we consider to be human expression is changing as a result of that. And I think once we continue to dumb down humanity, then we're gonna fight each other again. And, you know, we're gonna say, well, my God says I need to live here because I believe in my God more than you believe in yours. I don't know. Right. And we fall into dogma and, you know, destruction.
I'm asking that also because I literally am looking at you and I see Nikki Giovanni behind you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like this very interesting shot of like, okay, that is obviously an ancestor in the past, as you mentioned, ancestor, knowing that we're all going towards our ancestral recognition. And so in that way, and then as you're talking about the pessimism of like where AI is taking us, I'm just curious. But I appreciate your answer.
We can end on a positive note.
Any more questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment regarding the book banning. The book banning situation should challenge us as people to seek information and to be cognizant of oral history as it was in the past. I mean, you could ban all the books in the world you want, but if the story is in your heart,
it's
and
there.
You pass that on from person to person. That book banning should challenge us as a people to seek information.
Amen. I second that 100%. I truly believe that. I think, I mean, there's a line in this book where I say, you know, if the books are banned that you're seeking, you're on the right track. So like, keep going, go get that book. If the book that you need is banned, you're probably in the right direction. And so I think we need to kind of keep pushing against these cultural kind of wars that are trying to kind of make us forget.
Man, I'll end with this. James Baldwin said that artists are here to disturb the peace, and I think this book is going to disturb a lot of peace, and I am happy for it.
Thank you, brother.
So thank you, man. It's a pleasure having you
Yeah.
at Baldwin Company. Thank you. We're going to have a signing line for individuals to be able to get their book signed and also take a photograph with Irvin. It's going to be right in the front. So if you give us maybe 2 minutes just to get Irvin to the front, then we'll set the line. The line will line up on the right side of the bookstore. So just give us a two minutes before you get up. And thank you all again. I appreciate you.
Thank you.